once we start filing in, everybody starts splitting up and kind of going into what the military barracks is all right there. Now, right before we're blowing the hole is when we hear the DevGru land.
The Jessica Lynch mission in particular, that was the first prisoner of war that was taken, in the global war on terrorism. And we unleashed everything and we focused the entire battalion and other units and every asset available in order to rescue her and then also, rescue all the bodies from the soccer field.
Hey guys, I just wanted to do a very quick intro for my guest this week, which is Mike Burke. He's a professional podcaster and has a podcast, Legends of the 75th. And that is on, of course, every platform. And he does a very high quality show, interviewing various people who served in the 75th Ranger Regiment and several, Hall of Famers. If you would, go over to his page, take a look. I'm going to have the links below. And then we're just going to jump right into our story today.
Mike, awesome to have you, brother. Been really excited about having this conversation. Dude, how long have I known you? And I had no idea that you were on the Jessica Lynch mission. And I was Bravo Company 175. We were the main element. So we ended up going inside the hospital.
Okay.
One quick thing. I've been listening to you on David Hookstead and the tank incident and all of that. And dude, some great stories you have there. But if we can just zero in on and kind of recount everything that you remember of the Jessica Lynch mission, when you described jumping out and what you guys were landing on was a different experience from what I did. So I just want to jump into it real quick because I'm not Jason Bourne. However, I felt like it when I got to tell my dad that I was leaving for deployment, right? I assume you guys weren't allowed to tell anybody you were deploying either, right?
No.
Right. So as the Jason Bournes we are, as a PFC in Ranger Regiment, I told my dad that if we're on a call and I ever say that I had been popping willies on my motorcycle, that was code for I'm about to deploy. I'm sure that they had no idea while listening to my phones because our phones were definitely tapped. And there was, I think there was two.
I got a story about one. Yeah.
Do you? Yeah. Dude, jump in and share it because I know a couple guys who got kicked out of the regiment because they had told their parent, and then their parent got onto a email chain for their whole company and sent it out. Everybody pray for my son. God bless him. He is deploying to the Middle East. He is in 1st Ranger Battalion. Well, yeah. What's your story? What happened?
Yeah, so it wasn't in my platoon. I'll just say it was an individual leader in another platoon.
Yep.
But basically, and the only reason I got all the details is because I overheard the conversation. I'll explain that in a second. He got on the phone when you remember when we deployed out of RR. I mean, we went 6 weeks without showers. We were nasty. It was so gross. I remember when they put in the showers because it was this within the same day they put in that phone tent, and it was actually over by your guys' compound, but edge of the compound.
Yeah,
they had a recording of him talking to his dad, and he's like, "Hey, Dad, I don't know if you're watching the news, but if you saw anything on the news, that was me and my boys. We had a bunch of explosives and we breached this wall and we did this. I mean, and he
nailed it.
I don't want to say he provided all the details, but enough that it was cringy. I was sitting in my tent, we didn't have any air conditioning. We were sitting in the tent trying to escape the heat of the day.
Yeah.
And he was sitting right outside my tent because his tent was the next row over, but he just was backed up against the wall. And I was just laying in my cot. And I could basically hear everything. And I guess the platoon sergeant, the first sergeant, and I'm not sure who else, walked up and they're like, "Hey, here's what we heard. Do you have anything to say about this?" And he's like, "I didn't do that." And they literally pulled out something and they played it for him.
Yeah.
And, you could hear him just go, and he's like, "Yeah, okay, I said that." And they're like, "Dude, what the why would you know better? You're a leader within the, the element." I don't know if they actually sent it back. I don't recall. I don't remember if they did, but I do remember it spread like wildfire through hey, they are definitely monitoring the phones. They'll be saying stupid shit. So
that is funny.
But I loved how you had code words too, because I've had code words with my family and my wife and stuff like that. I literally, one deployment, I told my wife, I pulled out a map, and it was actually in Afghanistan. I pulled out a map and I said, "Hey, if I'm here, this is Miami. If I'm here, this is Bellevue, and everything else, because I knew I was going to be traveling a lot at that deployment. She'd be like, and so she said she was like at home, like, okay, he's up here.
Yeah. Well, and that's something that most people didn't understand of task force that have been on Wikipedia. I remember being in law enforcement and somebody sent me a Wikipedia page and it had everything. It had all the colors. It had everybody listed, and it's public knowledge. It's been there ever since. And I've checked year after year and it's always been there. They've never taken it down or anything like that. Yet I've had buddies who sent an email to other buddies and they use their call sign in their email, and then those emails were taken out of their computer and erased. They were magically disappeared. And just like long after being out of the military, decades after out, still those call signs are still secret, yet all that information is completely public knowledge now.
So we had two privates that they were like really close. They were buddies. They'd been buddies since like grade school. So what they did was, so they could communicate about what they were doing, they had an email account set up, and so that it wouldn't get intercepted, because emails get flagged, based off of words you use. They would write the email and keep it in drafts. Then the buddy would get on, log on to the email, and he could look in the drafts and he could reply, he could write out his response back and everything else. And they kept it in drafts. I don't remember how I think he left himself logged onto the computer. That's how it got found out or something like that. I don't remember.
Yeah. So you mentioned RR Airport, which AR, I'll never forget that.
Yeah.
You guys were already there and you guys came in and helped set up all the tents.
My platoon got assigned to ACO because the whole company for our CECO got deployed, and then a company from ACO got deployed. So they had 4 platoons in Afghanistan. They were trying to make up for the first deployment that we did. The BCO all went, and then ACO came over, and then I don't even know if CECO maybe came over for like a couple weeks or something like that. So they were trying to like make up for it for that.
Gotcha.
And so anyway, CECO went to Afghanistan, and then ACO was going to be the main effort, but they wanted 3 platoons, so they assigned my platoon to ACO. So Ted Kennedy was the first sergeant at the time. And, just like you, we weren't told much, but we expected like we were going to be flying in and like immediately getting this. We show up and it's just, it is a nice runway, very nice airstrip, but there's nothing. And for the next 4 weeks, all we did was set up tents. We were starting to have competitions about setting up tents. We pretty much built that entire tent city. I don't want to say it all, but we built a lot of it.
Man. I heard the horror stories when we arrived from guys that had already been there, and I don't know, who all that was. It was just because we're all wearing Velcro and we don't know. We know who the Rangers are because we have the Ranger haircuts. And obviously, the SEALs are all wearing the same blue t-shirt. Come on, guys. That's not very creative. And everybody,
Maybe
and they got big.
What we should.
I know.
We should have had red t-shirts.
We should have had red t-shirts. And they had big, huge lumberjack beards, but they were like 5'2" and 5'4". And so there's all these little dudes that were for whatever reason, the Def Crew guys that were there when we first got there. I know because we went to go get food because they would just drop pallets of MREs. Everybody would go grab all the good MREs. They'd cut open MREs and take the good stuff out. Oh, everybody's already at each other's throats within the first 2 weeks we're there. It was like baby powder. The best way to describe that area is it's not like Iraq. It's not like Afghanistan.
Well, you're saying the dirt was like baby powder.
Dirt.
Yeah, that's a good description of that. Yeah.
Was baby powder. When you stepped, a cloud of dust came up.
Yeah.
So you literally tried to step lightly as you were walking to create the least amount of dust. And I bring that up because the dust storm, which is one of the things that my family remembers most about the news and how much they covered that. I remember that very, very well. I was in the tent with a PL and platoon sergeant because I was Bravo Company forward observer. I am living in there with all these higher ups. And so, of course, anything trash, any sweeping, that's me. It's always me. I'm the dude who's always going to be cleaning the tent. Might as well have a maid outfit with me. And so the whole time that the sandstorm's going on, they're having me sweep. And so I'm sitting there trying to sweep sand out, which is just ridiculous because the more I sweep, the more it comes in because just even having it open.
I will say that was one advantage we had being there so early. Our tent, we hooked our tent up. It had We had a floor, we had a liner, we'd put sandbags,
nice.
like, you know, so we'd
We didn't have that.
hooked it up. Yeah. Well, you know, when you're the first, there's advantages to being first. That was the only advantage, by the way.
Yeah. So the very first mission that you were training up for was what? Do you remember that you guys were training up for a different mission in the invasion?
Yeah. So during the invasion, our primary mission was going to be actually the jump into BIAP.
Okay, right.
So that's what we were training up for primarily. I don't quite remember. I know we'd practiced like pre-jump stuff. And I don't want to say we'd rigged, but like that's what we were primarily preparing for. And then anytime anybody went across the berm, my platoon was a QRF.
Okay.
We went one time, I believe, and I can't remember. I don't know if it was the unit or not, if it was the SAS guys. We lifted off, we went across, we landed, you know, I think somebody got hurt or something, and we were going to go in and get them, but then we ended up not. They ended up doing something else. So,
okay.
But yeah, that's really what we were primarily training for. We're monitoring Third ID's progress. They made it across, and they made it to Baghdad. They started the seizure of the airfield and secured the airfield, and we heloed into BIAP, and then, you know, started running operations out of there.
Interesting. Yeah, so we didn't do that. We were training up for the BIAP jump, and we did that, I mean, all day, every day. That's all we did. We sat out there with the tape and taped off how we're going to do entries. Our ROEs was, our rules of engagement is, we can shoot them if, right? That's what rules of engagement are. When can you shoot at them? The rule was, if they're wearing boots. If they're wearing boots, they're definitely a combatant, because nobody in the airport and any of the surrounding buildings is going to be wearing military style boots. So that's definitely somebody leading you to a trap or death. And the second one that I'll always remember is, if someone tries to help you, and it was like, wait, what? And they're like, yeah, if somebody comes up to you and is like, hey, come over here, try to help us, that's an automatic look at their shoes, because those dudes are going to be wearing boots. And this again was the intel that we'd been given, which was, there's going to be people that are going to be there that are going to try to have rooms booby trapped, or because they know we're coming, and they're going to try to have things set up that are booby traps, and they're going to try to lead us into that. And so they might be wearing medical scrubs, but they're going to be wearing boots. So if they try to help you, immediately look at their feet. But if they try to help you, your very first key is look at their boots. If they're wearing boots, shoot them.
Yep, no, we didn't get that. Yep. We just got, I mean, obviously, you know, if they're shooting at you, obviously, but the boots, that's all we got. We didn't get the whole help thing. That's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. So to me, I was like, okay, I guess this is combat. All right.
But you don't speak Arabic. How the you know if they're
right? Exactly. So
they can literally be saying, "Don't go in there. There might be a booby trap," and you're like, "They're
I don't know. Boots. He's got boots on." So yeah,
that's so stupid.
Yeah, it is. God, that was the wild west.
Yeah, that's funny to look at. Well, you know, that's how I describe the invasion of Iraq. It was the wild west. I mean, I'm not just talking about like, you know, killing people. That's not what I'm talking about. Like, I mean, it was just bonkers. Do you remember when they put in the chow hall, and down the street there ended up being a chow hall, some army chow hall. Wasn't very good food. I didn't go very often because it was just so terrible. You know, we had all these vehicles, because there's vehicles all over the airfield. There's vehicles that we just like acquired, or people gave us vehicles too, you know, all this different kind of stuff. But every time you went to the chow hall, you would always end up driving a different vehicle back. And the goal was to upgrade your vehicle, because they were all hot wired. You'd drive something and then you'd come back and your vehicle would be gone, or you'd see a nicer vehicle and be like, "Oh, I'm gonna take that one."
Yeah, commandeer.
Yep. So it was definitely the wild west.
That's funny. That's funny you mentioned that, because I had never been through, like, they never taught me how to do hot wiring. But I remember some of our guys from Charlie Company went to South Africa to train with the South African paratroopers, and so they got to jump, and they got their jump wings. And while they were there, they taught them all to hotwire. Nice. And they were just like, we're just going to teach a class, right? And so they taught multiple classes, but the one that everybody remembers and cared about was a hotwire class. And then they broke for lunch, and everybody went out, and they're like, where did everybody go? And then they just see tractors driving by. Here's a bulldozer coming this way. Like, they just went immediately and started jumping into cars and breaking into things and hot wiring everything to practice what they had just learned. And it was chaos, because they were there not allowed to be arrested. the police are being called because all these vehicles are being stolen, but they're really just hopping in it and literally driving through the parking lots and driving around. They're not taking them anywhere. They don't even know where to go.
And what's really funny about that is like I don't know about modern like heavy equipment, but like old school heavy equipment stuff like bulldozers and it is so easy to hotwire that. Oh,
right.
Gosh, like,
yeah.
You know,
it's like they were made to be hot wired.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
The keys are secondary. Yeah. Getting back to the Jessica Lynch mission. So the BIOP mission ends up getting canked. So we end up not doing it. Now, we actually did load the plane and taxi the runway. And I don't know if that was just like a psychological test to see if we would all go and do it, because also the recce guys from Delta were like letting it be known, like, hey guys, we're getting word from our recce brothers that are actually like the dudes that are on the inside, already in Baghdad, living that life. They knew we were coming. As we said, everybody knows that. Everybody knows we have to take Baghdad International Airport. And they had told us as Rangers, like on the down low, they were like, hey, just so you guys know, the whole airfield has barrels of oil stacked everywhere. And they have like nets over it, so you can't see it when you're flying over, but it's there. And they've got bulldozers everywhere. And what they're going to do is this, whenever you guys are coming, they're going to take bulldozers. They're going to start tearing up the runway in multiple sections, and they're going to just bulldoze sections of the dirt and dump that oil into it and light it on fire. So your nods are not going to be useful, and you're going to jump into a fiery death. And we're like, yay. So we're training every day to die in a suicide mission. That was the backdrop of what we all know is what their plan is to stop us. And of course they had RPGs and all kinds of stuff that they were boxes of RPGs and everything already staged all there in that area that they were just going to shoot us out of the sky. And we're going to jump old school, like just jump out at, I think they said 400 feet, right, is the bare minimum. So you jump out, parachute opens, you hit the ground. Like there is no, you don't even have a secondary parachute. So that was the plan.
It's cool to hear the other intel that was briefed, because what we were told was the runway, we didn't hear about, the runway getting broken up. We heard about that. The oil, I don't remember that one. I mean, maybe it was, but I definitely don't remember that one. Maybe I blocked it because I was like, oh, that sounds scary.
Yeah, exactly.
But the other thing that we were told was because of the AAA threat, the expectation was on infill, they would lose at least one C-17, if not two C-17s, and a company worth of Rangers upon infill. That's what we were told. And we're like, yeah, that's a lot of people.
And what were you guys told what follow-on missions you were going to be doing?
Yeah, actually, I think we were given the deck of cards before. So okay, I knew we knew we were going to be Hunter and Bath members, and obviously the Republican Guard. Like we knew we did. Yeah, that if I recall right, and anybody that remembers accurately, feel free to call me out. But yeah, I mean, you get it a little blurred after, So.
Yeah, a couple decades passed. Yeah. But so we had the deck of cards as well, but we were told specifically that we were going to be going from one of Saddam's palaces to the next. So we were going to land at BIOP, and then from there, the closest one company's going to, the next company's going to the next closest. I was good friends with our medic, our doc. We're going to be doing continuous combat operations for 72 straight hours. So we were going to be stacked with cliff bars, specifically cliff bars, and speed, and the medic would dole that out as he deemed needed. But yeah, we weren't expecting to sleep for the first 3 days, just continuous combat. We're like, okay, I guess we're going to, like you guys, right? Just like the Jessica Lynch mission, we're packing so much ammo and just everything we can think of, way more than you actually need.
Yeah.
But again, you don't know that, right?
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. And they said, we were expected to hotwire vehicles, but we needed to inspect underneath them because they knew we'd be hotwiring vehicles. So intel had been that they were taking grenades, strapping them underneath with a pin, wrap something around the axle. So as you drive, you pull your own pin, it blows you up as you're driving. So that was one of the intel that they had already been booby trapping trucks that you'd want to take that are in the parking lot. And everybody knows to leave it alone and wait for the Americans to come take it. We finally get the word that we're going on a mission, and we get the word that it is going to be full mop gear. So we get all of our mop gear out and we make sure everybody's putting on their mop gear, making sure everything's good. Your gas mask fits, everything, right? You'd already done that 50 times before you deployed, but now you're going to be wearing it on an operation. You guys were dressed in the same or no? I don't know if you guys were in full mop gear.
And we'd already done a couple things in full mop gear. That wasn't the first one, but yeah, that was definitely the most miserable one.
Yeah.
We'd already spent a lot of time in mop gear by that point,
Gotcha.
So it was pretty miserable.
Yeah, we had just been practicing, but we hadn't been necessarily practicing to take over BIOP in mop gear. We were expecting there to just, regular combat, but we definitely had to have our mop gear with us, which we were just like, this is a pain. And then on the Jessica Lynch mission, they didn't tell us what mission we were going on, because again, just like we had talked initially, idiots get on the phone and say something. And it's usually always a Ranger Private, Ranger PFC who just got to the unit. And, okay, now we're going to go say something and make ourselves sound cool back home.
What's funny about that is that they told us before they were going and they shut down the phone tent.
Did they? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
That's a clue you're about to do something important. They shut down the phone tent. So we don't know exactly what we're going on, and maybe just at my level I didn't, and other guys did. I had come from the Marine Corps. I was a E3 there, which was not the same as an E3 in the Army. Lance Corporal, you're somebody who's tasked on a daily basis with getting things done, and then you have guys help you do it. You're really a team leader at that level. And then I go back to being a PFC where I'm too stupid to know anything or hold any responsibility. So I probably got very little information compared to some of the guys that were on the operation with me. But I just remember getting almost no information before we fly out. So where the Iraqi planes were in these concrete bunkers, and then we dropped the bombs on them during Desert Storm and blew all their planes up. Well, those big holes are still blown through these, and it's just this empty lot of, some concrete shade, but the sky is wide open, so you're still getting baked in the sun regardless, and that really kind of works as a little bit of an oven. We kind of learned, especially in mop gear, so it really was nicer to actually sit outside of it and try to create your own shade. So we weren't allowed to take any photographs. I assume you guys weren't back then either. Yeah.
Well, we did take one photo, a platoon photo, and I have it before.
Do you really?
Yep.
Okay, dude, I'd love to see that.
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
We're staging now. We're there and we're staged and we're waiting for nightfall, whatever. The first night, and I believe it was the second night, was when we actually went. So I think we were there for two nights. Yeah,
that sounds right.
And that was when I actually, for the first time, met Pat Tillman. So he was on. Did you? Because you were 2nd Battalion.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember which company was he. He was ACO. Where was he there when you guys were there?
Yeah,
okay.
He was there as well.
So again, for us from First Bat guys, he was kind of obviously everybody's, idol. Like, holy crap, this dude is somebody I used to watch and love watching in the NFL, and now he's one of us, and he's down here doing the same stuff we're doing. So I had to act cool. And literally my interaction with him, which is embarrassing, but I literally am walking by and he goes, "Hey man, do you know where the bathroom is?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's over there." And then I play it cool and walk away. And that's when I realized that was Tillman. It was like dusk, so it's kind of dark.
Yeah.
That was it. That was my interaction. That was my one claim to fame but again, I think for most of us, which, it's his bracelet I'm wearing today, like it was just the idea of somebody, who had the ability to not be doing what we're doing and to give that up, right? So it was kind of an ideal of Pat Tillman, even if you didn't know him, that was just something you definitely respected a lot. But yeah, so that was my one interaction with him. And a couple years later, we go to Ranger Rendezvous and we're all playing football against each other. And it was actually Bravo Company that we ended up winning the whole thing and ended up the champions. Because Pat Tillman didn't play. Like, there's always an asterisk. He specifically refused to play on the football team because he knew we were he was going to definitely win. So I'm sure his guys weren't happy about that, but we were stoked. So I got to see him a little bit.
We actually had quite a few NFL players up at
Did you really?
275, yeah. Keely King, Dan Hopkins. Keely King was a running back for the 49ers. And then Dan Hopkins was a defensive line for the Dolphins, actually.
Okay.
So
Wow.
yeah, we won a lot of football toilet bowls up at 275.
I bet.
And we had actually on the officer side, the only year that we almost didn't win was Chad Jenkins, officer PL. He was the quarterback for West Point for 3 years.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be
and
nice
he
to
was
have.
good. God, he was good. He's one of my best friends now.
Yeah.
I love that dude. But yeah. Yep.
So there we are. We're just kind of hanging out. Honestly, they're just kind of telling us we don't know what you're going to expect, but we're just going to have to be prepared for whatever. So we're going to wear mop gear when we get on the ground. That call is going to be made there, but until further notice, we're going to be wearing mop gear, expecting to take, some type of chemical agents in an attack. And the hospital where she's being held, and I'll never forget this, where we were at, they did the calculations, and they're like, we're exactly 9.1 miles to the hospital from where we're sitting right now. So when we went to go to pee, right, whenever we went to the bathroom, they just had like a hole dug, and I think that was actually from a bomb dropping and hitting the ground. And so it's obviously disgusting. Everybody's been using it. But some guys would try to walk past it, and there's a little bit of a berm, and a couple times dudes got freaked out on because they're like, "Hey, idiot! Like somebody from the town, it's 9 miles away. They could come over here and be sniping you." And of course, we can't see any. It's just this big flat kind of space. But I remember them just being like, "We're not in a safe area. This is not RR anymore." And I was just like, okay, next level, ramp it up a little bit more. This is combat again. Okay, that's right. We're in combat. I haven't got shot at yet. I haven't done anything yet, but.
So this was your first deployment?
First deployment. Yep. What rank were you at that point? How many deployments did you have?
I was a sergeant. I was a team leader. And this was my second deployment, yeah.
Because you'd been to Afghanistan previously?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. And that's something that other people don't know, especially with the task force, because sometimes we were in Iraq and then somebody is in Afghanistan and they would fly us to Afghanistan. So it wasn't you're in Iraq for this deployment. Sometimes we would go from Iraq to Afghanistan to other countries that we were never in, all that fun stuff. So we moved wherever the worst of the worst were, and that's what we went after. So this was being my very first combat mission. We had the Air Force TAC P. We went up and actually got on top of, this is the only picture that I have, and I'll have to send you a copy of it. But I'll always remember that picture because, again, we weren't allowed to be photographed. And so it was the Air Force guy who has a camera and takes a picture. We're all in our mop gear, or at least our suspenders. We got our pants on. And the Air Force guys are in, little tiny, the workout booty shorts and just chilling, while we're still wearing our mop gear. But I just remember this always because, again, I hadn't experienced combat, and now we're going to go get this girl. But there's an entire military barracks, and this unfortunately is left out of this scene. But to give everybody a picture, so you got a wall that was, I believe it was like 8-foot cinder block concrete wall that went all the way around the entire hospital. And again, as not like what's depicted in comics, the hospital was modern, but it wasn't beautiful. And the military barracks was right behind it, kind of wrapping around in the courtyard. And that was, if I remember correctly, it was somewhere between 500 to 1,000 members could be in those barracks. Like that's the size of the element. And so we were expecting to land. We were going to walk in one click, so that way they wouldn't hear us coming necessarily, even though they knew we were coming, obviously. And we were taking 46s, 47s.
Yeah, it was 46 is the adaptation to the Chinook. Yeah, so they can land on aircraft carriers.
Yep. And so we land a click away. And so that, I just remember, I think I was on the third relay of guys coming in, and I was with the doc, our medic, and they had literally just experimental. They had went to Bass Pro Shop and got like something you could carry big game with when you went hunting. And it was like it was big, huge wheels, but it was like tires for a bicycle, like a big tires. And then it was kind of an L-shaped like gurney thing. And on it, we had 2 A4s strapped to it we had a lot of medical things all on the actual handles of it. I forget what all ammo or other things that we had in addition strapped to this thing. And so it really took more than one person to carry it. And they when they drop us off, they come pick us up. I go to get in, which I'll always remember this. I go to get in and I'm walking in and there's already a dude that's in there. Why is there a dude in there? It should be empty. We're trying to do combat here. What's happening? And this guy's wearing a camera on his face, a big camera. And I'm like, and I literally looked to one of our guys. I don't remember which one it was, but I was just like, who is this dude? And why is he here? And he was just kind of standing there. Camera. So obviously that footage that we all see that was declassified came from somewhere. But I don't know why this guy was just taking every trip, or if this was his first time. I don't know if he just magically appeared in the helicopter that at that moment, and then I go load in. But I had never seen him before, and he's in this on our third trip over to drop us off. So he's in, we go ahead and get out, and he stays in. He didn't even get out, at least when we got out. We go out off, and it was just normal. They drop the ramp down, we go off, and it's sand, and then there's a big berm to get up. And so I helped Doc grab a hold of that and help get that up to the top. And when I get up to the top, now I can actually see, and Chinooks took off. And I don't remember if they were going to get a fourth group, but we're already in a line. Everybody's already moving toward the hospital. You can clearly see it's one click away, so it's not that far. And it was like this big, wide road with like rice paddies on the sides, or some type of mud, or, that's what it reminded me of, because I lived in California around rice paddies in Northern California. And that's what it reminded me of, like these just kind of big things with just mud or something, but it was too dark and we had monoculars, so it wasn't, beautiful. But I will always remember when I got to the top of this berm and we're in Ranger file lines on both sides going. I'd never been to a music concert to that point in my life. However, I'd always heard of Pink Floyd's Laser Light Show, and this was the closest thing I could imagine to that. Everybody had their PQ2 on, and it was everywhere in the sky, like not like they're just flailing around, but it was like everybody's moving and searching and looking, and so there's just lasers all the way down. And now I can see how many dudes are here, because again, as I said, I know I'm Bravo, but I know that there's 2nd Battalion guys, there's 3rd Battalion guys, there's SEALs here somewhere, right? There's all kinds of other moving parts to this. So when you land, if you would just kind of walk us through where you landed in reference to the hospital and kind of what it looked like for you.
So I don't remember the orientation of it. I want to say it was to the south of the city itself. Okay. And BICO, our primary mission was the cordon of the hospital. So we were basically supposed to move in kind of wagon wheel formation, almost kind of around the hospital and set up perimeter and take over the buildings, get to the, the high vantage points so that you guys could come in, the SEALs could come in, because there was also a ground element for 175 convoy element as well. So when we landed, it was probably about a click. I don't really remember. But when we landed, I just remember that the aircraft kind of landed and, you could see out the back of the ramp. And then it kind of went down a little bit further. And then it went down a little bit further. And you're like, what the like it felt like we landed. And then it stopped. And then they went to go put the ramp down. And it didn't go down very far. We're like, okay, I guess, we're getting off. So, we like scramble up the ramp and we, like pretty much throw ourselves on. Luckily, it wasn't very far of a drop. And it was a really soft landing. And you're like, what the hell? Like, what am I landing on? Because we expect the same thing, and this was one of my first time landing in a helicopter in combat. So, you're expecting sand or gravel or whatever.
Right.
And, or maybe even a field at least. But it was very different. And then, kind of fighting to get on your feet and everything else and kind of get oriented. And then you realize, I'm like, this is trash. Like, this is garbage. This is, all kinds of different stuff. And it stinks. It's just absolutely horrid smelling. And so basically, like, kind of swimming almost, like trying to fight through this trash that's like up to, freaking your waist, like trying to pile out of this. We landed in a landfill. And so, we were in full mop.
Yeah.
full mop gear,
Yeah.
rubber boots on the back, freaking, pea mask on the hip, everything, gloves in your pocket, all this different kind of stuff. And finally get out of there. And we're just like, oh, we're smoked, so
Yeah.
get out of the landfill, orient ourselves and like, okay, there's the hospital. Cause I do remember you could kind of see where the hospital was. There wasn't like a light on it, but I want to say it was the tallest building. There was a lot of tall buildings, but it was like the most predominant, and it looked like a hospital too. Like actually it looked like a hospital. So we're like, okay, that's where we need to go. So then, we start moving through the streets. And so Nasiriyah, right?
Nasiriyah. Yep.
Yeah. So the power had been shut off there, come to find out, and all services been shut off there for over a year because they'd done something. I don't remember what it was, but Saddam Hussein had basically cut them off of water, electricity, trash services, all this different kind of stuff, cut off the city for a long time. And as soon as we started moving through and, trying to get through to where we needed to go, quite frankly, it was a shit show. And the reason it was a shit show because every ditch, every time you stepped off the road, anytime you stepped where human traffic would not normally go, you were in mud or shit. And there's multiple stories of dudes like literally septic tanks and stuff like that, or like major ditches. Cause we have the monocular. If I remember right, it was kind of a dark night too.
Yeah. Zero
falling in, and dudes having to grab them and everything else, and them coming out and they're just covered in human feces, like covered. Yeah. All of us were, it was through a landfill, now through human feces. And I just remember by the time we got to the building, all of us were like, this, like, this is not what I signed up for. Like, what in the hell, man? The rest of the company apparently didn't all land in the landfill, and they were smart enough to not get off the road. I won't say who the squad leader is that was on point that night, but he definitely wasn't the best land nav expert, him and his team leaders. So they took us like this wonky route. And I remember the squad leader at the time, I was like, after like the second guy, my saw gunner, Chris Pritchard, like, he freaking fell into a ditch. I'm like, Mark, we just got to stay on the road, dude. And he's like, yeah. He's like, I'm like, we're not following. Like, we know where we're going. We know where we're oriented. Like, let's just stay on the road. So we did. Some of those other squads didn't. And man, it was
paid for it.
They really, really did pay for it. We got to the building. And it had like this, so I knew where we needed to go and everything else. I was a point team leader. I was an alpha team leader. And it had like this chain around it. And I remember I'm like, Mark, I'm going to blow it. And he's like, okay, cool. So it was like down this really, really like tight alleyway, right? And so I put the charge in between the chain and everything else, pull off the lead. And I'm like, hey, I'm going to pop this. This is I think it was a 3-second time delay. It might've been a 6. I don't quite remember. I'm like, I'm gonna pop this and then we're just gonna run, because it's real tight. We don't want to be right next to it. And he's like, okay. So, he's up there, pulling security with me. So I pop it. And the way I tell this story is because, I love to give Mark, as he sabotaged me because I think he wanted to get a good laugh. There was a barrel and he says that like his P mask hit it and tipped it over. I personally think that he tipped it over on purpose. So anyway, so we're trying to run out of this like tight little freaking alleyway, and this barrel falls over, and before I could react, I freaking trip over it and I go over a freaking tea kettle, and then the charge goes off, and now I'm trying to get like back on my feet. And it's funny because we cleared the building. The building was empty, and then we realized, okay, hey, we don't actually have a good vantage point. So then we went into the next, building, and it's funny as because we bust into that one, and I think we busted through like the cupola or something like that, and we went downstairs and there was a family in there. Like there's this dude in there, and so my team's behind me, and we bust into this room, and I just remember like I'm scanning, looking, okay, it's all this dude's family and everything else, and then I look and there's just lights on his feet. And, because my saw gunner and my 203 gunner, they're just looking at his feet because the ROE was if they have boots, you kill them. And I'm like, hey, like first look to see if there's a weapon. That's what you want to look through first, so. But anyway, so then we get up to the rooftop, and, it was, pretty anticlimactic for Bravo Company after that, to be honest with you. We just sat on BP. but there was a ton of buildup, and that episode that I did that you've referenced a few times, some people have said, oh, that's not true, like, all this different kind of stuff. I'm not saying it is true, but the intel we were told was that this city had been so fortified, had so many, Iraqi Republican guards and military units and, tanks and all this different kind of that the Marines had actually gotten pushed out of the city.
Exactly.
They were in an outer cordon. Again, I'm not saying that's actually what happened. I'm just telling you that's what we were told.
Same.
So we were told you're going to fight your way to your blocking position. It is going to be a movement to contact, building to building to building, and you're going to be fighting. So that's what we were prepared for after this, tranche through the freaking landfill and freaking ditches and everything else. And, I told my mom I wouldn't die covered in shit. So now I'm like all pissed off that I think I'm going to freaking get smacked and, my remains are going to be covered in human feces. So I'm pissed, but anyway. Yeah. So, but I mean, after that, we ended up moving, we ended up collapsing a couple different times and moving around and everything else, because, we get reports that, hey, there might be people in here and stuff like that. So after we kind of set up security, but again, I think there was like one shot fired and it was some dude that came out on his roof in his AK and he got smoked, he's wrong place, wrong time.
Yeah.
But, other than that, it was pretty benign, for Bravo Company. We saw the helicopter come in with the SEALs, but, 175, they're the ones, that, set up the perimeter around, the hospital itself and, kind of had, the events that happened there. And then, obviously the bodies in the soccer field, they're the ones that did all that stuff. So the biggest thing that happened to us was I had this squad leader again, another squad leader in another platoon. It was the same one that was at point one. They lost a bandolier of 203s. So we had to literally like do this online thing trying to find this bandolier of 203. It was about the most eventful thing that happened for 27.
Nice. Well, I can somewhat relate, not fully because they didn't drop us into the landfill. But so whenever I went over, of course, you guys were allowed to bring your own knives, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So now, of course, the regular military though, that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah.
So I still have the knife from that mission.
No kidding.
And I still have some of the mud that I laid down in. I just went ahead and kept it. And I cut the smiley face off of it, but I put a sticker on here that says "Smile, God loves you." And this was my knife for whenever I went over, and it has the pin, the retention pin. So when you push it, then you can still jump with it, and that's why I have it set up the way I do. And it still has my Biko fist.
Nice.
If you find this knife, it's mine. But I have this knife for that reason, and I never got to use it, of course. But yeah, that was my big claim to fame. So I'm wearing this thing, and we get up to the hospital. I kind of described for you. We're walking down the road. Now, before my chalk landed or somewhere in there, some of the guys had mentioned that while they were walking, a couple of dudes came out from the city, from that area at least, not from the hospital, but from the city area with AKs, and they wanted to meet Allah, and they got to meet him. So a couple of our machine gunners, 240s and saws just obliterated them. And so that was the only interaction. I think they said it was only 2 guys that got smoked there. So when I get there, we're just kind of all walking. Now I remember SOAR guys, right? So our little birds are flying overhead, and I remember them having the IR spotlight on the hospital, like as they're doing rounds, they would light it up, so it was obviously
that's
the one
right.
we're going
I do remember seeing that. That's right. That's also what helped orient us. Yep. Yeah, you're right. Yep.
So once they're doing that, but the SEALs haven't landed at this point, so we're walking in. We get to the outside of the wall. Now, the front of, to give you an orientation, so think of the city is to the right. The hospital is to the left, but the gate is all on this side facing the city naturally, so they can drive into it and drive out this way. But it's all completely walled off. There's no entrance, as far as I know, all the way around that concrete wall. There might have been on the other sides, but I don't know of it. So our idea is they're probably going to try to, have any ambush thing that they would have would be on that side. So naturally, we're going to blow a hole in the side of the wall and go in this way, and then we'll start attacking the buildings from here. So we get our our large Rangers. So we had one dude who was 6'6", 300 pounds, and he was solid muscle. And yeah, and so he was carrying the C4, 240, the sledgehammers, everything, right? So I remember he goes up, him and a platoon sergeant, and they go up and they, our team leader, whoever it was, with him, and they start stacking the explosives. We got fires. We're still talking with them. And if I remember correctly, we had Spooky for that, but I don't recall because we never saw Spooky. But I remember obviously that we definitely had the little birds obviously buzzing around. So we're going to blow the side of this. And they said, all right, we're putting pounds of C4 that they're stacking on this wall.
Shit. Yeah.
And so everybody's got to get down. And we didn't know what we're getting down in. So we just get down as we jump down into the mud. That wasn't mud. And so we start smelling as we're laying in it. And we're like, hurry up and blow that. We're laying in poop. We can smell. This is definitely feces. And then they finally blow it. When they blew it, they hadn't something. I wasn't in charge of the fires at that moment. I'm just, the RTO there going along. I've got my M4 and I'm going along until somebody needs a call for fire. Aside from that, I'm just, in the stack with them, but I'm hanging out with a PL. And so I'm waiting for this to blow, and the little bird goes right over, as the explosion. And so luckily, it didn't get hit, but I'm talking as close as you could possibly get to not getting hit. It was a near miss. It was a near miss. And immediately everybody's freaking out, but again, it's combat. You've just got to roll with it, and somebody will get chewed out later, especially me and my FO, because like, holy crap, that was a near miss. We can't afford for this to be little bird down. And so we're going to go through the hole. It didn't blow a big enough hole. It blew a big chunk. So now we have our big Rangers grab the hammers, and they start going to town on this wall. And of course, their construction isn't great. So it didn't take but, a minute or two to get a huge, massive hole knocked through this thing. We get into once we start filing in, everybody starts splitting up and kind of going into what the military barracks is all right there. We're still watching in case that there's some snipers in there, which we expected or something like that. Now, right before we're blowing the hole is when we hear that the DevGru land. We can see the helicopters come in and we can see them land. We're blowing the side of the wall, and they've already landed. So now they're supposed to check I think it was 6 stories, if I remember correctly. I think it was a 6-story hospital.
I was going to say 7.
6 or 7. Yeah, 6 or 7 stories. And so they're going to land. They're going to start at the top. We're going to come in from the bottom, and we'll be searching going up that way. We blow, they land. We're supposed to kind of synchronize this. We kind of do. We get through, and by the time we make our way over to the actual hospital building, after we'd cleared just a few little buildings, it's obvious that they've abandoned it. There's nobody here. We're not getting into the big, massive gunfight we thought. We get over to where the front of the hospital was, which wasn't very far. Again, this courtyard isn't that large, but I get over there and take a knee, and I'm not in the shot that you see, but I'm there by the front of the hospital. And they're like, take a knee, she's coming out. And I'm like, I had already heard on the radio them go, we got her. And I was just like, we just got in here. It's been like 2 minutes. You cleared a 7-story building in 2 minutes. That's insanity. This makes no sense. So you just sprinted through the hospital, and now there could possibly still be booby traps, is what I'm thinking as PFC, Ranger here. Yeah. And I'm just like, okay, I don't know what that means, if they really have or not, but we're all going to go over here and pull security. So we go over and just get down. We're just pointing out, waiting. And sure enough, here comes the PJs and the SEALs, and they go out, and actually the helicopter's kind of waiting for them. They come up and load her, and then they take off. Obviously, our heart is just kind of, amped up, and I'm just expecting something to go wrong because, again, with the build up to this and my first combat mission, this is combat. And with explosions, there's near misses already, laying in poop. And some of the guys had jumped down and laid down. And this hospital, as you mentioned, they hadn't had trash services, and they don't necessarily have the cleanest practices anyways. They had a pile of human parts that they had just been throwing out onto the ground. And that was the pile that some of the guys laid down in. So it could have been worse, actually. And so, yeah, I just remember, I'll never forget that. And these guys come back and they're like, well, this is what I was laying in. And I was like, yeah, I guess the mud was a little better.
Damn.
So I was actually there to get to see the bird lift off. And it was such a crazy thing for me to experience. But now where are the others, right? The interpreter that we have is trying to get information out of the people in the hospital that are there. A few workers were there, and they keep saying the soccer field. And we're just like, okay, what does that mean? Is there a building by the soccer field? So I just remember there was this time period where we're just like, okay, they're in the hospital, right? So we need to go back in. And that's when I go back to what I just said, we thought they just ran down, found Jessica and ran out. And now we've got to go back and clear the whole hospital because there must be the others are here somewhere. And so that's what we didn't know at that moment, that she was the only one that survived. And of course, what we were told was that there was a doctor from the hospital who had walked, 9 or 10 miles to get to the Marine checkpoint that said there's a female, her name is, Jessica Lynch, at this hospital, and gave the info. And that's all he gave, though he didn't know about any of the others.
Gotcha.
According to the info, again, PFC, that I was being told at that point. So we didn't know, but we were hopeful that we're going to get others out. And there was at least 3 others that we expected to be with her. Finally get the translation through that they're deceased and that they were buried in the soccer field. Obviously, all of our hearts just sink. Right now, this is a recovery mission. And so what happens is we all start moving over there. My FO hands off control to Fires to me, and he's doing something else with the PL. I forget what he was doing. There's a whole sand table inside the hospital that they're taking a look at, and they're gathering information, taking pictures and all that kind of stuff, because they had left it completely intact. And we don't know why, but they did. And it was literally the whole city of Al Nasiriyah, all of their main positions and where they had stuff set up, I guess, bridges to blow and that kind of stuff. And we don't know if any of that's real or not or whatever. And we find out that the remains are out here. I was able to go in and just literally take a quick look and see the sand table. I mean, it was massive in scale and it was really well made. It's not as good as, Rangers do in Ranger School, but it was pretty good. So we get out to the soccer field, and that's where the digging starts by hand, because again, we don't come with big shovels getting ready. Like, we've got sledgehammers and we've got things to break doors in with. So a whole lot of just digging with whatever was had. I think a couple of guys had some ski tools, and that kind of thing with them, but not all of us, because again, we were all expecting ammo and grenades and the fight of our lives, not to be digging slit trenches. What else are you going to be digging, right? So when that digging starts, we're still hoping it's a mistranslation. We still hope that this guy's wrong. We hope this guy's just a jerk. We hope that this isn't true. We hope that they're still alive somewhere, and there's still some way we can save these people. And then the first body is found. And it's just kind of one of those deals where, you know that they met a very terrible, end, and, Jessica survived, God saved her. She's still alive to this day. But it was very rough just for us, I think, after the mission to sit with that and just be like, we weren't expecting this. I, at one point, just forget I just lose my mind, evidently, and just decide dudes are digging and digging, but guys are getting exhausted. We're still in mop gear. And finally, somebody say, okay, take your mop jackets off. We're fine. Take off the mop jackets. Let's dig. And so finally, dudes are doing that because guys are just getting exhausted and sweating, and it's super bad. It's like literally you're wearing a sauna suit times 3 while you're trying to actively dig. And so they weren't buried shallow, but they weren't buried very deep at the same time. But as they were, getting to the bodies, and there's another body and there's another body again, because we didn't know how many there would be. The smell of being there, I kind of forgot where I was at the moment, or lost my brain, because I want to help. And I'm a dumb private, so of course I can dig, but I start making my way toward, and my FO like grabs a hold of me. You've got fires. If we get attacked, you are the one calling in. What are you doing? He had just walked up, and I'm just like, I'm an idiot. Yeah, I felt like such an idiot at that moment. But the dudes that had to do the digging, there's a reason why they're not going on podcasts and they're not necessarily talking about that. And again, I don't have, it's not my place to really share, other than just as a American who did not expect for that to happen, and to see and smell and experience that was the end of these brave people who didn't deserve that. And it's really unfortunate that their vehicle broke down and all the things happened as they did. But I will always be proud that we were able to get them and bring them home. I think that's the consolation is, Rangers never leave a Ranger behind, and it didn't matter how long we were going to be there. And I remember heated conversations between guys digging and guys not digging, who were wearing higher brass, that were, suggesting we need to do this, we need to do that. And heated discussions in which, people were just like, F off, we're digging bodies out right now. We don't need to hear your mouth at this point, and just continuing to do the mission. And, that it took a very long time, because it was not, these people had been in the ground for a minute and they had been decomposed. So it took a lot longer to dig, because you have to dig all of them out. You can't just dig onto their arm when you pull them out. It's not like that. And I remember the mission. Okay, the mission's done. Now we've essentially, once we've got the bodies out, Jessica's already gone. Now it's time to exfil. The exfil is the part that is the least memorable to me, because the smells and the sights is what's burned into my brain. And then I just remember the sun is coming up and we're being dropped off back where we were at the bombed out airplane hangar. And the sun comes up and we made it. And these people are back, and immediately everybody's getting sprayed down. They found some type of decontamination thing, and everybody's getting sprayed down, especially the ones that were digging, first and foremost. But even though we're laying down in poop, that's fine. These guys, needed cleaned off. And it was surreal, because again, first combat mission is that, so it's just like, well, everybody's going to hear about this mission, and, and all eyes in the whole world were on Jessica Lynch. Can we get her out? Is she still safe? Can we get her back to her family? And we do. And I think that set a precedence for me, that just in my own mind, because the reason I left the Marines was to make a difference.
Yeah.
Years later, I ended up running into one of the Marines that I'd been serving with at that time, and I literally got to find out what would have happened had I stayed in my unit in the Marines. And infantry heavy weapons. They went to Djibouti, Africa, and did gate guard for a year. So I just want to be a part of something bigger that made a difference in the war. And from seeing the towers, being hit, to there and having, at least Jessica be rescued and she's alive, and these bodies being recovered. For me, I was on cloud 9 personally, and, no matter how much I got smoked after that, didn't matter. And no matter what mission I was going to go on after that, even the missions that were deemed suicide missions, it was like, I'm ready to meet God. I've already done what I needed to do here. And I come from a very, very strict religious background, which is the reason why you notice I never curse and I never drink alcohol my entire life, still haven't. And so I was a weird Ranger, obviously. A lot of dudes did not like me because, immediately just my face is very offensive to some, but also, once you find out that I don't curse and I don't drink, that's an automatic, I want to see you in pain. But it was an experience that I'll never forget, specifically that mission, because again, it was a mission accomplished for me. Bush gets a lot of flack for that. Mission accomplished, and that sign, and that's something he'll always be mocked for. But that morning, seeing that sunrise and I had made a difference, I don't know, for me as a young Ranger, very first combat mission, that was a high point, and And what I've also noticed is my buddies that have died afterwards, command sergeant major, right? Dudes that have gone on to do amazing things. When they pass away, Command Sergeant Major Barreras, which was my first sergeant, Bico Gunny Barreras, he passes away in a firefight as a command sergeant major in Afghanistan. And what's the write-up in the news stories? Everyone. Jessica Lynch mission.
Yeah.
That's the one thing that he's remembered for. Out of all the things that he's done, all the things he's accomplished. Same thing when my buddy ended up passing away in a parachuting accident, free fall parachuting accident. He was an instructor.
Yeah.
You know, guy that was on the Jessica Lynch mission passes away. So to me, it's like it's going to follow me the rest of my life. And when I die, hopefully an old man, the one thing, it won't be my podcast. It won't be anything else I've done. It'll be that I was on that one mission that one time. And that's what the write-up will be passed down for my kids. That's why it was so important for me to just tell that story and just kind of share that, you know, that I was there, that what I saw and what we accomplished. Again, more so everyone else that was there other than me. I felt like I was just a front row seat to the coolest mission on the planet.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Well, I can't thank you enough, you know, for sharing that, you know, and it definitely impacted us all. You know, not all of us were in the soccer field or near the soccer field, but you know, when we talk about, you know, Ranger missions, you know, and the suicide mission thing's thrown out a lot, you know, but it's not wrong. You know, how it plays out is, you know, always different. But there's still been plenty of missions that I've been on too that, you know, it should have went a different way. It quite frankly should have went a different way, you know, but training and perseverance and just sheer violence of action ensured that it didn't go that way, you know, and that's kind of a story of, you know, Ranger Regiment as a whole, but then also, you know, other units also, you know, that were able to do that. But when we talk about, you know, the Jessica Lynch mission in particular, that was the first prisoner of war that was taken, you know, in the global war on terrorism. And we unleashed everything and we focused the entire battalion and other units and every asset available in order to rescue her and then also, you know, rescue all the bodies from the soccer field. And the reason I highlight that is because that is something that is important to us. And that's not shared across other militaries. You know, other militaries tend to look at people as numbers. And, you know, even like Russian doctrine, if you study Russian doctrine, it's all about mathematical equations. You know, this city has 75,000 people at it. So therefore, this is how many bombs we need to drop. This is how much ammo or ordnance we need to shoot at it. And this is how many Russian soldiers we need to throw at this problem. And we will take the city. How many Russians we lose in the process is not the point. We captured the city, and then that's fine. It doesn't matter if it's 70,000 Russians died. We captured the city, and that was a, you know, strategic objective. And us as Americans, we don't view that. We will throw everything. We will jeopardize copious amounts of life. You know, I don't know how many people were part of that mission, but let's just say all said and done, the amount of Rangers that were on the ground, the SEALs, the aircraft, and, you know, the pilots and everything else, you know, it's probably over 1,000 military members, you know, there on that target to save, you know, one person and to recover some bodies. And there's power in that, and that is the American way, and we got to be a part of that. It doesn't matter. It's honestly irrelevant what actually transpired on the objective. We were prepared for it to go very different, and we went in with a mind frame that it was going to be very different. It wasn't a gunfight. It wasn't this rolling gunfight that we ended up having to do. But that's really, to be honest with you, irrelevant, because we all stepped on the helicopter. We stepped off the helicopter thinking that this is what we're going to be required to do, and we're all willing to do it. Because not, you know, quite frankly, you didn't have to get on that helicopter. You could have said no, you know, given the odds, given everything, you know, obviously your military career would have probably been cut very short, but you get my point. Like, we had a choice. We made a choice, you know, and I think that's an amazing thing. And that's why things like that, missions like that, you know, that we got the fortune to be a part of, are so historically important. And then I would also add in too that one parent got to see their daughter again.
Yeah.
And she gets to go and live the life that she gets. We wish the others hadn't died, but the parents, the husbands, the wives, and
brothers,
maybe
sisters,
children and everything else, they know what happened. They don't have to be left wondering, where is this person? Are they still alive? Studying on prisoners of war in Vietnam. But there's still belief that some of those prisoners of war that are MIA at this point, that they're still alive. That's how many years ago? Over 50 years ago. Can you imagine carrying that burden? And in Iraq, and we can go to Vietnam. You can go to Vietnam tomorrow. You can go visit Vietnam. Iraq, none of us are going to visit Iraq. We might not know if we hadn't recovered those bodies. Who knows what would have happened? We might have dropped a bomb on that city and, deleted any evidence that ever could have existed had we not done that. So my point is, it's important that we did that. And yes, a lot of dudes made sacrifices, and a lot of people carry that burden of what they had to do that night with them. And it's unfortunate and it sucks. And I know a few of those, they're Ranger buddies of mine, but that's what we signed up for. That's what we did. And it's an honor to sit here and talk about that with you, and I appreciate you sharing that. And, I appreciate you being part of that as well.
I appreciate it. One thing that separates the Rangers from many other units, obviously, is you can quit anytime. And every single day, you are reminded in the Ranger Regiment, you can quit anytime you want.
Yeah.
And there actually was a couple of guys, I think there was like 2 guys the whole time I was in the 1st Battalion that actually quit. And their life was not fun after that. And it was hard to understand why somebody would do that. But then again, especially after an event like that, where that you got to be not just a part of history, not just because people are going to know about this, not just because that's going to be in the headline when you die, but because, like you just said, we're bringing our soldiers home to their families to lay them to rest in America where they belong. And so their families can go to their gravesite and talk to them just like we want to do with our relatives. And these are a bunch of 18, 19-year-old kids, and some dudes that are 21, 22 that are team leaders and whatever, that are down in this hole digging. Not a single one of them flinched. I'm right there with them as this is all started. None of the dudes were guys were being pulled out by other guys they could see that they were exhausted, and guys were helping each other. The level of intensity and the level of dedication that they are to do this mission that they were never expected to, they weren't mentally prepared for, and they're just dig. And we've got to do it before the sun comes up, by the way, because that whole city is going to come alive and come kill us if we're still here during the daylight hours. So they're digging as fast as they possibly can. Again, I appreciate you being here, and jumping in on this podcast. I think that it's very powerful to keep sharing this story, because Jessica, what she went through and what our other soldiers went through, and that their lives mattered. And we lost 11 soldiers. Some died immediately when they got hit with the RPGs. All those names need to be kept alive. And those people, it's not just their families that need to remember the ones that we recovered. It's everyone that needs to remember that. I obviously love your podcast, everything you do, bringing to light the legends of the 75th. These guys that we all looked up to and served along with. One of the guys that was just on not too long ago was the instructor for RIP when I was going through. And so now I've connected with him that I would have always been intimidated to reach out and connect with him. But he was on your podcast, and man, Al Pertus. And after you talked with him, I felt like I knew him after the conversation. And it's great because, again, it's the like mind of these guys that are just willing to do anything at the drop of a hat to do what the mission is required, to help another soldier. It doesn't have to be a Ranger. They're those types of people. That's what I love most, because Marine Corps, Ranger, I get it. I always get the same question, but I have a love for the Marine Corps as a whole and for fellow Marines, but Rangers is who I went through combat with. Rangers is who I was galvanized with. And that is the thing that I will always carry with me to the grave. Obviously, anytime you want to come back, you're always welcome. So appreciate you.
Thank you for having me on, and thank you for what you're doing.
Absolutely.